Hello students, this is Mr. Ezra. Today we are going to talk about interval notation. This is a prerequisite skill for some of the characteristics that we're going to use to describe different types of functions this year. So I wanted to get this out of the way and make sure that you were comfortable with it. So back in middle school, when you saw something like maybe x greater than or equal to 5 and you saw a number line, you would find 5 on the number line and you would put a closed circle on it. And you would either draw an arrow up or shade on the line to the right, correct? So that was a way to describe 5 and everything greater than 5. Well, there is another way to do this that mathematicians sometimes use. Instead of using a closed circle, we would just use a bracket. And then we would draw our line to the right, or we would shade to the right. Well, if I'm describing this in something called interval notation, I want to know the interval that is being described. So to do that, I'm just going to use a bracket, just like here, which represents the fact that 5 is part of the solution. It's 5 equal to 5 or 5 greater than 5, and that's what a bracket indicates. And that we're going to go from 5 to the right essentially forever. And when you say forever in math, you're talking about heading towards a concept called infinity, from 5 to infinity. Now, infinity is not a number. It's not something that is actually included in the interval because it's not a number. It's just like we're going to keep going and getting closer and closer and closer to it. So because of that, excuse me, because of that, whenever you write infinity, you're always going to use a parentheses. And you can see that this notation is pretty compact and easy once you get used to it, that we're just saying an interval from 5 to infinity. Way back in the time machine, if you saw x less than 2, you would find 2 on the number line, and in this time you would use an open circle. Well, remember in algebra, maybe from the 9th grade or last year, that when you're describing an interval, you would use parentheses. So some mathematicians actually on the number line would use parentheses on the 2, and we would say less than 2 means to the left of 2 on the number line. So we're going to the left for both of these to describe that. Now, interval notation is always, and you got to get used to this, it's always least to greatest. It's always the smallest to the highest part of the interval. So what is way over here on the left of our x-axis here? Well, if we're going forever to the left, and we're going towards something concept called negative infinity. So if we're going to say our interval starts on the left and goes to the right, our leftmost number is negative infinity. Remember I said infinity gets parentheses. And this time, since the 2 is not included, it's everything less than 2, but it's not 2. So 2 is not included, we'll put a parentheses on the 2 as well. And essentially, that's interval notation in a nutshell. If you're including the number, if it's got a closed circle or an or equal to sign, if it's included, then you would use a bracket. If it's not included or it's infinity, then you would use parentheses. A lot of times we'll sandwich an x between two numbers. We'll say negative 5 is less than x is less than or equal to 3. Well, what this means is essentially that x is sandwiched between these two numbers. It's any value that is bigger than negative 5 but less than or equal to 3. So on my number line, if I find negative 5, I'm going to use an open circle. But for 3, since it's less than or equal to 3 on the number line, I will use a closed circle. And remember, this is what's in between negative 5 and 3, so we would shade that middle part right there. With our new notation, we'd use a parentheses here because it's not included. But at the 3, we would use a bracket. And that's what we do in actual interval notation. Instead of writing out a graph, we're going to put parentheses negative 5, comma, 3, bracket. And that describes the interval from negative 5 to 3. Every number from negative 5 to 3 on the number line, all the integers and all the in-between parts. And it also includes 3, but it does not include negative 5. Negative 5 is not actually a solution. It's not part of it, but it's like the starting point of it. Let's look at one more. It's called an OR statement. So here we have x is less than or equal to 1/6 or greater than or equal to 5/6. Well, you'll notice that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've already got 6 sections here. So 1/6 is going to be right here. And because it's less than or equal to on 1/6, that's 1/6 right there. I'll shade to the left. Or could be greater than or equal to 5/6. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's 5/6. And that's going to be an open circle. Well, the other way to do this on the number line is instead of a closed circle, we would use a bracket. And instead of an open circle, we'd use a parentheses, all right? So in interval notation, this is going to be a little bit different, okay? Essentially what's happening here is our first interval is from negative infinity to 1/6, right? So that's what I'm going to do, parentheses, negative infinity to 1/6. So that's a bracket for the 1/6. And over here, I've got a parentheses starting at 5/6. And I'm going to the right forever towards positive infinity. Remember, infinity always gets a parenthesis. So how do I put these two together? There's like, we're basically saying that this is true or this is true. Well, in mathematics, the word or, sometimes, you just write the word or. It's this or this. But there's a symbol that we use to connect two intervals together that represents the word or. And it's called union. And union is just a big capital U in between them, right? So this is called union. But essentially, it means or in math, okay? Y-axis is just the same. If I'm going from -1 to +2, this time my y-axis is an up and down, a vertical axis. So on that vertical axis, I'm going to find -1, and I'm going to put an open circle, and this is the between one. It's kind of an and function, but it's between -1 and +2. So at +2, I'm going to use a closed circle because or equal to +2. And what I want is everything shaded between there. Well, with my new notation, instead of a closed circle, I could use a bracket. Instead of an open circle, I can use parentheses. And it's everything in between. But I have to do this from least to greatest. So on a y-axis, from least to greatest is going to start at the bottom. So we would say starting at -1, but not including -1, and going up to +2, including 2. That would be the interval notation that represents this inequality or these two graphs. On the coordinate plane, if I have a function like this and I want to represent the values that are possible for x, right? So I'm really just looking at the values that are possible for x. Where do I start getting x values? Well, I start getting them at +4. It's going by 2s at +4. So would I include the 4 if there's a dashed line? Absolutely not, right? So I would use parentheses at the 4. I'm going from 4, and everything to the right of 4 is shaded. That means it's all included forever, forever, forever. And whenever your graph has a part that goes all the way to the edge, that's a communication that it keeps going forever. So this is going to keep shading this way forever, keep shading down and up forever. But I'm only interested in left to right. So to the right, it's going towards positive infinity. There's our interval, 4 to infinity, that represents all the possible x values in this graph. Every ordered pair is going to have these x values. Well, this one has two intervals, doesn't it? And it's got solid lines. So what does a solid line mean? It means that we are going to include the numbers. So since we're including the numbers, we're going to use brackets, right? So we're going to go from negative infinity, which always uses parentheses, to -2. with a bracket. And we're going from positive 2 forever to the right, and that's a bracket as well because it's included. It's got a straight line, not dashed, all the way to the right towards infinity. Right? So forever to the right towards infinity, it always gets a bracket. And what do we put in between these two when we have two that we're saying it's this one or this one? There's like an or in the middle here that's understood. We're going to put the union symbol whenever we have more than one, and that would be what you would write. What's possible for x here. Okay. So just to sum up, open circles in interval notation are parentheses. You can see the original inequality here. Closed circles are brackets. Open circles are parentheses. You can see that follows down if you want to check these out as some examples of different intervals. These are all the in-between intervals, right? So between 6 and 8. Notice that it's always less than, or less than equal to, less than. You'll never see a greater than in these types of inequalities. Well, that's it for today. We'll see you in class.